Connecting the Dots, Reliving Northwoods History with Carrie Bladorn. Few people know that the Northwoods was at one time blasted with intense levels of radiation in the name of science and fear of nuclear war. 51 years ago, deep in the woods south of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, a site was developed to study the effects of radiation on northern forest ecosystems. Today, we'll take a trip back into the former site and learn about the history of the Enterprise Radiation Forest Project with the help from local history enthusiast and Enterprise area resident, Tyler Schilling. You ready?
Yep.
All right. In the 1960s, fear of a nuclear confrontation with world superpowers led the Atomic Energy Commission and Department of Agriculture to study the effects fallout would have on the environs of the United States. In 1968, a meeting was held at the Northern Institute of Forest Genetics on Highway K just west of Rhinelander. Today, the facility is known as the Forest Service Northern Research Station. Tests studying the effects of ionized radiation on tree seeds and plants had already been taking place at the lab since the early 60s, a field with little prior exploration. Now, the U.S. government wanted to see how radiation would impact northern forest flora and fauna on a large scale. Geneticist Thomas Rudolph from the Rhinelander lab was tasked with leading the project.
A site was chosen in 1,440 acres of county and state forests released in the town of Enterprise, about 40 miles north of Wausau, in a large uninhabited tract of Oneida County Forest. A formidable 8-foot-tall chain-link perimeter fence topped with barbed wire was completed in 1971. Caution radiation area signs could be seen along the fence every 100 feet. A concrete block research building located just off of Highway Q would serve as the property's sole access point. This building housed the equipment necessary to safely conduct the experiment from a distance of over a half a mile from the radiation source.
A radiation location, Site 1, was identified in the southwest quadrant of the property, where 3 forest types, aspen, paper birch, and northern hardwoods, converged. Control sites were determined and pre-radiation data collected. Rudolph's team collaborated with local experts, such as longtime Enterprise resident and woodsman Art Below, to document the forest's history of logging activities, identifying it as a second growth forest. Botanists cataloged the plants and trees, which resembled the forests across much of the northern parts of America. Deer within the fence were trapped and relocated, with some hunted by locals with special permit before the project began. The project was well publicized, so Northwoods residents were aware of its existence. Still, rumors of nefarious government activities circulated throughout the taverns and barbershops of the area.
In August 1971, a gamma radiation sample previously used in Puerto Rico was transported to the National Laboratory in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and re-encapsulated with 10,000 curies of cesium-137, a highly radioactive isotope weighing 416.7 grams, little less than a pound. It was shielded in a 2,000-pound lead case and arrived in Rhinelander on September 3, 1971, and transported to Site 1. A 6-foot by 6-foot platform was constructed of wood with a half-inch steel deck 6 feet above the ground. Equipment was installed to allow the cesium sample, held in a stainless steel tube, to be brought out of the 2.5-foot tall lead encasement by a series of cables and pulleys attached to the nearby trees, thereby irradiating the surrounding forest.
11,000 feet of electrical cable was ran from the block building at the main gate to power the equipment, with the last 500 feet buried 2 feet below the ground to protect it from radiation. Safety was paramount. 10 different keys were needed at the control panel to initiate the irradiation process, with emergency fail-safes in place to encapsulate the sample in case of unauthorized entry or emergencies.
Irradiation of the forest began on May 3, 1972. The cesium sample, raised approximately 4 feet above its encasement when active, emitted gamma radiation similar to that of an X-ray machine, but potent enough to be lethal at close range. The forest was irradiated for 20 hours per day, with the remaining 4 hours, 8 to noon, reserved for safe study. Rudolph explained that when the cesium was exposed, it was on, and when it was encapsulated, it was off, posing no detectable radiation threat to the research team.
Hundreds of trees, plants, and animals were meticulously studied, with detailed data and documentation recorded. Small animals such as chipmunks were trapped and tagged with devices that recorded levels of radiation. Birds and their nests were also monitored. Despite extensive media outreach, Rudolph spent considerable time addressing concerns from locals and politicians that were worried about the experiment's potential impact on the northern Wisconsin forests. Some locals thought they were going to kill all the forests in Oneida County or leave radioactive elements in the woods. Even though it was difficult for people to understand, he reassured them that the project would not devastate the local environment if done safely. The Enterprise Forest Radiation Project was originally planned to run for 20 years, with 5 sites within the property irradiated. But the project was discontinued on October 16, 1972, after a single growing season, much to the dismay of the research team. Years of effort had gone into curating the property and project, but in the end, its funding was cut short. The team continued to gather data after the project ended, and they did their best to make the most of the information they had collected, publishing its important findings in 1978, much of it for the first time in history.
The site was shut down, the fence removed, portions of which were donated to the Oneida County Airport, and the CCM sample retrieved by the Atomic Energy Commission. The DNR later decommissioned the site, finding no danger to the public. The property has since been reverted back to public Oneida County forest land.
While short-term effects were observed among trees, plants, small animals, and birds, the long-term impact on the forest has been insignificant. Today, standing at radiation ground zero beneath a dense green canopy, you can't tell anything ever occurred here. The site is a thriving forest with no residual radiation detected. The project leaving behind only a few wires in the ground, and the legacy of an important chapter in U.S. atomic research, right here in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. I'm Kerry Bladorn.
And I'm Tyler Schilling.
And this is Connecting the Dots, reliving Northwoods history on Newswatch 12.